Hello traders and investors, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets. We're doing it from a neoclassical perspective. That's supply and demand on the charts. We're using that for our trend. We're using timing with anchor bars, retest, regenerate zones, and a few other concepts. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. It's broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube, and it's under the channel L.A. Little. If you want to subscribe and you haven't, just reach up in the right-hand corner. Anytime you see me push content, you'll get a notification. As far as these markets today, folks, I've been telling you for about 2-3 weeks, this market's going to expand to the downside. And that range that had built out was going to expand, and that's what we saw start to take place today. And I'm going to show you these charts, and we'll go over them together. NDX down about 0.5%. You lost about almost 2/3%, or a little bit more than that on the Dow, on the S&P 500. On the Russell, it was the big loser again, over 1% lower, 0.5% on the Nasdaq. Overseas, red pretty much across the board. The only thing was up was the dollar, despite Trump saying maybe that we ought to weaken the dollar. You had gold and silver up as well as bonds. So what do you have? You have a flight to safety. You got a moving away from the risk assets, and that's what you see and have seen for the last 2 or 3 days. Well, let's go to the charts. Let's take a look at those. So when I say that we were going to expand the range, let's talk about where the range was again. Now, we had 2 ranges. We had the smaller range that was set up here off the big anchor bar. That blue bar tells you it's an anchor bar, and that anchor bar is used in some of the zones that you see on the chart. In this particular case, it was used for the support zone. You also had a larger range. That larger range was here, and we're still inside the larger range, but we've expanded now outside this big bar. Big, wide price spread, high volume bars typically hold price for a decent duration. This held for what looks to be about, 15 bars, 16 bars. It finally breaks to the downside today. You don't see volume escalation yet. That's a bad thing, actually, from a bullish standpoint, because volume escalation would tell you that you're getting some sort of capitulation, but you're not getting that yet. This tells me that you're going to go after the swing point low come Monday. If you look at the rest of the picture, as I pointed out last night, the target is down here. You're coming after the retest regen zone, the bullish retest regen zone on the daily time frame. If you pull this over on the weekly, it doesn't look like anything, right? Just a little blip. But as you've seen before, little blips can turn into something larger, and though you don't see it on this chart, they can turn into something very big if in fact this is a major top. There's nothing that tells you this is a major top yet, although when this did happen, I told you this probably was a topping pattern. And the reason for that is you had an unsustainable rise in terms of the angle of ascent. When you have an angle of ascent that's that steep, you can't maintain it. Eventually, it's going to fail. You're going to get something more like 45 degrees. And so as this comes back, it's going to push down into that area, and that's probably where the buy is going to be. And as we just talked about, the initial one is probably around 2,300. On this particular chart, the retest regen zone is way down here around 2,200, and that's where this thing eventually could get to if things really get bad. If we look elsewhere, you got pretty much the same picture on the Russell. So you had the expansion of the range off the big bar on the S&P 500. You have the same thing here on the Russell. This was the bar we were talking about. Again, the top, the bottom. See how it maintained price right inside of it for a while? Now it's breaking. It's just sneaking over the bottom of it. Going to go down and try to break this out. Now, the real concern here is the Russell, because if you look at the Russell is also set up to break on multiple time frames. You got a swing point low right there. That swing point low would break this range that's been holding now for, oh my goodness, what is that, December? So this has been holding in this range. You had a little peak above it. Now you push back into it, and now you're going to try to break it on the downside. That low is 1341.46. We close it at 45.24, so we're just 4 points away from a break on multiple time frames potentially come next week. If it does that, if you're doing your homework, you're thinking ahead and you're asking yourself, where can it go? You've got the big bar up off the Trump election here. That's an ideal spot to be looking at. Of course, the other one is always your bullish retest regen zones that are more than 6 bars, and that's back down here. That's a pretty good drop from this price point. What mitigates all of this when you're looking at the indexes themselves is the Nasdaq, right? The Nasdaq is still in the range. You take the big bar range, top to bottom, hasn't given it up. Going to test into it come Monday. That test on the Nasdaq is going to correlate with the test that I just showed you on the S&P 500. They're going to come at about the same price point. You should expect if we gap down Monday, they're going to try to buy it. So be looking for that. Same thing on the NDX, of course, more concentrated at the top 100 Nasdaq stocks, but you've got that big bar range. It's still inside of it, and that's probably going to stick for a while longer. So this tells me that you shouldn't get too excited if you see the downside open up come Monday morning. Of course, if it blows through here, it's a totally different picture because you're going to start breaking a lot of swing point lows on these indexes as well. If we move over to the sectors, the sector we're going to start with is the SOX. Now, the SOX had been trying to hold for a long period of time, and it had another one of those range bars as well. Well, it got under it yesterday and broke a swing point low at the same time. Today, or 2 days ago, yesterday got the cascade to the downside. Today continues, breaks another swing point low yesterday, and now it's going after the other two. If you remember when it was up here a week ago, I was telling you this was the index you wanted to watch. It did the test, got the bounce, and then finally broke. That break, I told you at the time, was going to try to drive you down into this area, and that is where it's heading. The real bar that you want to look at is over here. That anchor bar is pretty special. If it gets down into that price zone, that's probably not a bad place to look at it. If you look elsewhere, basic materials started to really come off hard. Energy came off hard as well. And finally, we'll stop on the financials because the financials had earnings this morning. You had JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and I believe it was Bank of America reported, either Bank or Citi, I forget which one. All of those sold off by the end of the day. They got the early bounce this morning. They came back, they tested intraday, and they finally broke on this swing point. Now, this is on the daily. If you move over and look at it on the weekly's barely holding. Weekly is just up underneath the current price zone. If you break it here, you're going to break it on multiple time frames, and that's going to cascade it back down into these bars. That's the danger that lurks out there. Whether they break right now or not is a different question. But if you're looking for tells, watch the SOX. In particular, watch the XLF, and then watch those NASDAQ NDXs on their ranges. That will give you a pretty good idea about what's happening. Of course, there's a lot else we could talk about, and there is a lot of talk to others, especially those that have joined recently. Another member joined today. I'm spending a lot of time with these folks getting them up to speed. I can only take 2 more. If you want to be one of those 2, all you got to do is write me, TAT at TA Today, and we could talk about it, see if it makes sense for you and makes sense for us. Have yourself a great weekend. Tomorrow's closed. I'll see you on Monday. Good night.